All right, founders, it is time for another pitch deck critique and review. And this time we have another deck from a subscriber. Thanks for sending that in. And always to all the founders that send me their decks, I appreciate your courageousness and the willingness to put stuff out there so that we can all learn together. That's the only reason I do these types of reviews, is that it benefits the community as a whole. I appreciate it on the whole. This startup is at a pre-seed stage. This is a pre-seed deck, and it is trying to raise 400K. That is the raise amount. And I'm going to say this deck is at about 50% in terms of completion and getting there. And there are a lot of holes in this. It's a little loosey-goosey, and you're going to see what I mean. It's got a good general idea, and we're barking up the right tree because we are in the AI space for a particular vertical, but we really need some work in terms of explaining exactly what is going on, because there's some statements made to this that make me question. It's going to make any investor question. Before we continue, my name is Ed Kang, 7-time funded founder with 2 exits. That's just a fancy way of saying I've failed a bunch of times for your benefit, because I like to help early stage founders, especially at the pre-seed or seed stage, pitch, get that investment, at the same time, get the traction to get that investment, get the attention of those investors. If you are here and you're a founder and you have a pitch deck that you want to see reviewed, stick around to the end of the video. I'll show you how you can make that happen. Happy to help. In the meantime, if you want to see more content like this, hit like, comment, subscribe. That is always very helpful. Now, I have raised over 9 figures of funding for my startups, other people's startups, and different funds, and I've learned a lot of lessons along the way. Here, I'm going to show you how to do a screener deck. This is a deck that you send to the investor to get you the meeting, not the deck to get you the investment, to get you the meeting, which is very important that you make that distinction, because too many founders put way too much in these screener decks. This deck has got something good going for it. It's pretty brief, and I thought it was a great example to explain how we shore up a screener deck, make it exact, and make it worth the while of the investor to read it all the way through in about 3 to 5 minutes, and then give you a call because they want more information. Let's jump in. First off, title slide. As always, you do not want to waste any space whatsoever. We have the smart wholesale marketplace. There's some major issues going there. As I always say, just put a very simple line describing what your startup does. Forget the marketing jargon and the hype, because the very first page, the investor needs to know, where am I? What general industry, what ballpark am I in? Are we even playing the same sport? You want to make it easy for them as possible, not try to give them some fluffy marketing slogan with buzzy words that just makes them frustrated. The issue here is, I don't know what smart means. What do you mean smart? I'm thinking maybe it's AI driven. That's what makes it smart. Then just say that it's AI driven. Wholesale marketplace for what? What are we talking about here? Just say something like an AI driven marketplace helping e-commerce merchants discover and sell wholesale goods. Something like that. Just be very straightforward, because that's going to help you. Because if you do land it and it lands right into where the investor wants to be, then they're going to be more enticed and they're going to flip to the next slide. Now we get to the market slide. I don't need this. You have to start off with the problem slide right off the bat. That needs to be your first slide. Why? Because the investor wants to know, is this solving a problem that I care about? Do I understand the problem? Because all investors are going to make a decision based on the problem, clarity of the problem, the size of the problem, and the clarity of the solution. Because an investor may say, I need to 50x my investment, so this better be a very big problem. And you're saying that right here with your market slide, but you have to first tell them the problem that you're solving. The issue here is that it has nothing to do with the problem that you're solving. Today, there are 24 e-commerce sellers globally. So what? What do they need? What are you talking about? Where are we? Especially if you got a good tagline, you've got a good description on your cover slide, and you get to this one and it completely is a bait and switch. It doesn't say or get the investor to the first step that they need to see, then you're going to lose them right away. So put the problem slide up front. And I get what you're doing here. This is more of a why now slide, but you're going to be a lot more succinct to convince the investor that you understand the problem and you have the right solution for a very big market. Now we got another market slide. I just want to show you something here. If you just advance this slide, you do not need to put this into your deck. You're going to upload it as a PDF with a link so that they can just click it and see the slideshow without any animations. If you do want to put a slideshow up there, just take out all the animations. Nothing more frustrating than having to click, click, click. It just creates that extra friction that you do not want to put into the mind of the investor. Here's another market slide, $20 million brands, 4 million resellers. We're saying all the same thing again. We do not care. And I'm not saying that this is not true and this is not important information, but at this moment of the pitch deck, the investor does not care. Now we're getting into the goods. We're getting to the problem. But what you've done is you bifurcated the problem. You divided up between brands and resellers. I'll show everybody else that in a moment. And you can't do that, put it all on one slide. But let's break this problem down. Let's look at both sides and see what we can do. 70% of online brands go bankrupt in their first year of operations. That is a fact. That is not an actual problem that you're trying to solve. Yeah, 70% of online brands go bankrupt in their first year, but why? You're saying the main reason being that they're unable to compete. Okay, that's just a very generic problem. We need to explain why they are going out of business other than competition, because that's just a given. Get more exact. Brands are going out of business because they're not selling enough or they're not reaching enough markets. They don't have enough distribution. And get me some facts to explain what's going on there. Make the problem a lot more precise so the investor immediately knows the problem that you're trying to solve. I'm going back all the way to clarity of the problem that you want to solve. On top of which, see this image right here? This does not need to occur. This is not a good image because it looks like there's an employee that needs work and you're just creating more cognitive dissonance, more friction in the brain. Empathize with your investor, make it easy for them. I'd much rather have you just have a text slide than have an image that's going to be distracting because we're going to be naturally attracted to images. Now we get to the other side of the problem. Resellers. This is a little better because it says finding new products to resell is risky and time consuming, manual process that takes 3 months with 30% failure rate on average. What's good about this, and I'm breaking down the pieces that go in a problem statement. The problem statement needs to have the scope and the severity of the problem. And you do have a scope here, kind of started in the brand slide of talking about how many brands there are, how many resellers are there, and you've done a good job in explaining the severity of the problem, which leads to a failure rate. But now I've got an issue because you got 70% brands failing, 30% of resellers failing. What number are we talking about here? Let's make it a marketplace problem and combine the two together. Say something like X amount of brands and retailers will go out of business every year because they can't find each other. It takes 3 months just to find each other and set up relationships, something along those lines. So talk about the problem of connecting brands and resellers and define it that way. And your investor is going to get it because you're setting them up for our marketplace solution. If you have a marketplace solution, you need to have a marketplace problem. Combine the problem with brands and resellers together, but make sure you keep the scope, how big is this problem, and the severity. If the problem's not solved, what is the cost of it? And try to give it to me in something tangible that investors can feel in terms of the dollar size cost of the problem. That always moves the needle. Now we're getting to the solution slide. A smart wholesale marketplace that matches brand products with resellers. I like this. You're actually pretty close on this one. But then the question is, what does smart mean? So just be very distinct. Our AI platform is a wholesale marketplace that matches product brands with resellers. That's great. The only other thing that I would add is explain what is the quantifiable solution. In other words, if your problem was it's slow and manual, then you can say that the solution is fast and automated at 10x the speed or efficiency. So if you go back to the problem and it says it takes months to connect brands and resellers, well then say that it happens literally in minutes or in fraction of the period of time. So make the solution a 10xer. Explain that this is a 10xer solution compared to the problem. Now you got these sub bullet points here, brands, resellers, and both. This doesn't make any sense because you're saying 2x annual revenue. How do you know that? How can you tell? You're adding more information that's just going to cause some suspicion. I'm just going to be straightforward. 10x team power, what does that mean? Resellers, 10x team power, like do they have teams? Are you staffing them? Are you making all their people more efficient? Well, that doesn't align with this statement up top here. Reduce excess inventory. It means nothing. You don't have to explain this right now because all of these are the results of you solving the problem. It is not actually explaining the solution of the problem. Get rid of all this right here because you're much better served if you just have one sentence right at the top. And always, pet peeve, take this solution word out and make it a lot smaller. If you want to put the solution in there, your headline up here needs to be the biggest font. Work on this slide, make it a lot more clear, and take out all the fluff because it just sounds like you're using buzzy words and you're embellishing because you're insecure about your solution. You don't want to come across that way. Just be straightforward. Here's the problem, and we solve it with this solution. Now we come to the product slide, and the language actually gets better. But before I get into it, let's put the market size slide before the product slide because the market size is going to be important. Now you're saying here our AI market maker will analyze the brand's product metadata and match it to a suitable reseller and facilitate the deal. That's fantastic. This is actually a better solution statement than anything that you've had. It's very clear, just like I was talking about. I'm glad we got to this slide. That means this slide is redundant. If you want to put a product slide and how it works, give us a 1, 2, 3 step slide. For example, you can just say here, reseller comes online, fills out a form, describes what they're looking for. The AI web crawler goes out and indexes and analyzes all the brands and the products that are there. Or maybe it's a two-sided process where the brand comes on, submits their product, the AI analyzes the metadata, and then the reseller comes on and says, all right, this is the product that I want to sell. And then the AI matches the two together in this marketplace in how much period of time. You could explain it that way, just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps if you need to, but just be very straightforward in terms of what the product actually does, because especially when you're talking about AI, which is a good spot to be in right now, but you need to be a lot more clear exactly how the AI is being used and how it's being deployed, because there's so many different types of AI, we don't know what's happening. Here's your business model. I can see what you're trying to do here. You can just make it a lot more straightforward. You can just put at the top, we have a commission-based business model, and then just explain that we are charging between 5 and 30% depending on volume and season, the number of transactions. Put it all together in just a simple, straightforward sentence, because you've got too much information that's just confusing. Explain, we're taking transaction fees from brand and reseller that average between 10 to 30% based on volume, margin of transactions, and then what season we're in, volume and transactions. I don't know what you're going to do, but you can consolidate all this together and make it a much simpler. Now we get to the traction slide. And remember, traction is everything that you've done to de-risk the investment, to give the investor confidence. And I want to explain this because when I look at these points, I do not have confidence. You say right here that you have a strategic partnership with Wix and you put their NASDAQ ticker symbol. I'm not sure why you're doing that. And you're explaining that there's 25 million ARR potential integration. That doesn't mean anything. That should go into your market potential slide if you want to include that data. You're telling me traction that you've already achieved a strategic partner with Wix. You see how this message is coming across. I don't believe that you have a strategic partner with Wix. I know Wix is willing to have partnerships with anybody. Call anybody partner if you start using their stuff. Have you actually talked to Wix? Do you have an LOI or contract signed with Wix? That would be legitimate traction. Is a contract the type where it says Wix is going to send you all their business? Well, that's not the case here. Therefore, you're saying things that just aren't true, and you're going to lose the trust from the investor. Deep AI model developed and tested, achieved 90% accuracy on product sales price prediction on Amazon, has features that are not in the market. You're saying so many hyperbolic things. Deep AI model. What does deep mean? Developed and tested. What exactly does that mean? 90%? Show me, tell me, explain what exactly happened. And you're saying that it has features that are not in the market. Now you're saying things that are more untrue. Even if they are true, I'm not going to believe them. Don't tell me that nobody else has done this or they're not in the market. Just explain what you've developed in-house, because that is enough to move the needle. That's enough to say to the investor, all right, we're worth it because we can build our own products in-house. And then you're saying MVP launch in 2 weeks. That's actually what I want to see with the traction. What I'm going to tell you is I recommend that if you can already launch an MVP and you don't need funding to do so, launch the MVP and then explain the traction. Put all the results of this MVP into this traction slide. We launched the MVP. We got X amount of products, X amount of resellers on there. We achieved a 90% accuracy rate because we saw firsthand the product in action. That is the traction. Action, traction, that is the traction that investors are looking for. These 2 bullet points right here are just simply not true in my mind. Even if they are, you haven't given me evidence to believe as such. And you might be sitting there on the other side of YouTube saying, but Ed, we really have this. Doesn't come across here. Look at it from the investor's standpoint. And here you're giving me something promising that you're ready to launch an MVP, but it's 2 weeks. How do I know that's actually going to happen? Because everything, especially MVP launches, take double the time and double the money. Explain it to me and give me the proper traction metrics that I'm going to be looking for. And if you have to, wait until after you've launched the MVP. Go-to-market strategy. I'm glad you have this slide in here. Any marketplace, you're going to face what is called the chicken and egg problem. What comes first, the chicken or the egg? And that's the issue with the marketplace. Investors are all highly trained to take you through the idea maze in terms of the chicken and egg scenario. What do you need first? If you bring brands on first, they're not going to want to come on because they don't have resellers. If the resellers come on first, they're not going to want to come on because there's not a lot of brands. So how are you solving that? Your slide here does not tell me how you're solving the chicken and egg problem. If you're saying that you have direct access to 700,000 stores, 10 million products via Wix stores, that doesn't tell me a go-to-market strategy. That tells me the state of affairs. Next are Shopify and WooCommerce. That means nothing to me. Tell me exactly what's going on. Tell me that your AI is going to scan 700,000 stores stores and 10 million products, and somehow you're going to contact the brands and the dealers that are selling these brands. And now we're back to the chicken and egg problem. If you're scanning 700,000 stores to know how brands are being resold, then how are you going to get to the people who make the decisions to allow reseller programs to happen? So maybe you have to explain that your AI is going to crawl and analyze reseller programs that are already looking for resellers that are going to line up with what they want to do and how much they want to sell. Now, there we have a go-to-market strategy that I can believe, because I might say to you, you know what, the chicken and egg problem is really difficult. But you say, Ed, we've thought that through. That's the reason that our AI is trained to analyze reseller programs that are out there already, because they're very hard to discover by resellers. The next problem you've got are the resellers. So you say here, direct access to 200,000 US Amazon resellers via affiliation with top industry key mentors and influencers we're connected with, aim to capture 700 on our first year. You're saying so many things. You're making so many promises that now I still do not believe. I understand that this might be your go-to-market strategy, but then break it down for me. Say that you're going to scan social media and find influencers who are selling, or you're going to scan Amazon stores where you know they are reselling products. You've got so many technical terms here. I don't know if you got a brand and you're actually going to sell it in an e-commerce store. I don't know if it's affiliate programs. I don't know if you're going to be helping these resellers actually contact these brands. You're not explaining this to me. So don't put yourself at risk by saying something that the investor doesn't believe is going to be true. Just be very basic and explain, this is how we're going to go to market. These are our first steps. And then take it from there. Simplify it down. The KISS principle, keep it simple, stupid. That's going to help you, because right now, all this information is working against you. Now we come to the competitive landscape slide. Resellers need to constantly identify high converting products to outpace the market. See this right here? You don't need it, because you should have already said that in the problem solution and all the other statements. They're looking for a quick and accurate product matching solution. All right, we've got some dimensions. You're using a magic quadrant. If you're saying quick and accurate, your dimensions have to reflect that, which you are doing right here. Low accuracy, guesswork matching to high accuracy over here. And the y-axis is fast and slow. First of all, when you say low to high accuracy, that's very subjective. How are we explaining it? So we need to explain the very clear features. For example, maybe you want to have manual matching, which makes for low accuracy, and then AI matching, which makes for higher accuracy, data-driven. In fact, if you just say manual driven or individually driven versus data driven, that's a good enough dimension right there. Now you got fast and slow. So we're going to eliminate fast and slow, subjective again. And you're going to say automated minutes and then manual. What does that exactly mean? Maybe it's manual application and approval. So you got manual guessing and matching, and then manual processing and actually getting approval to resell this stuff. Get rid of this. Who cares what Alibaba did? I understand that they're a big business. And you can say up here, Bazaar is separate. Now you better be very sure here that Carbon 6 is data-driven and manual matching. This is going to be interesting, because if you're saying they raised a 66 million Series A, well, they're clearly doing something that is working, and you're going to separate yourself over here. So reanalyze the quadrants, the X and Y axis here, and just make sure that you are properly differentiated. Now, here's your team slide. And I'm going to tell you right now, your team slide is the most encouraging part of this, because everything boils down to team, especially at the pre-seed stage. And despite all the issues that I've pointed out up to this point in time, it may seem like I'm being a Debbie Downer, I'm being negative on it, this makes up for it. The reason for that is you've got technical people in-house. Investors invest in founders at early stages. Investors look for teams at the early stages. So the fact that you've got this team and you've got 4 founders and you've got technical talent on the team and you got this experience, that creates trust in me that even though you might be completely messing it up on your first go around, which usually happens, that you're smart enough, you got enough experience, and you've raised money before, that you can get together and figure it out. I'm not as much worried about whether or not you can pull it off. I'm worried about what will happen when things start to break down and your team has issues. The other thing that you've got going for you is that your team is gelling and you've got experience working together. So let me show you how to make this slide a lot better, because it is currently the strongest slide in your deck. First off, former colleagues and best friends, you don't need to be saying all this. Working together for over 10 years. You can say our team has 10 years of experience working together and have launched 7 e-commerce products with 250K annual revenue and personally connected to top industry leaders. Take that out. That's another hyperbolic, embellished statement that I really don't believe. Sure, you might have network, but I don't believe that you're connected to the top industry leaders. Not yet anyway. Don't put that seed of doubt in my mind. Just be very straightforward. Our team has worked together for over 10 years, launching 7 e-commerce products with $250,000 in annual revenues. And then you've got the rest here, which is fantastic. Like I said, I think this is a pretty solid slide. Now we get to the next team slide. We got advisors. Just put it up here, advisors, all right? This is going to be a lot helpful because you don't want to be misleading. So one thing that drives investors nuts is when founders pretend that advisors are part of the team or they try to kind of hide it. We don't want to come across that way. We got Deloitte, Monday.com, and APM & Co. We got BD Advisors, great. All this is fantastic except this. We surround ourselves with people with proven experience who have led innovation and grow businesses. Of course you have. Of course you should. That is a given. Don't state the obvious. Just put the advisors and say, look at our team that we put together. Now, let me add one more thing that you might want to put in there. If you're making claims that you already have connections to top influencers and talent, what's the reason that you're not going to feature them? You might as well put them in there and say, this person has 10 million followers that has sold 10,000 cookbooks, something along those lines. Put it in there if that's indeed the case. You see where I'm getting at, because you already stated that you're connected with all these top industry experts and influencers. What you're going to do, well, show me that you've actually done that, or don't say that you've done it. Now we get to the fundraising slide. We're raising 400K pre-seed round, 75,000 secured. I have no idea what that means, so don't put that in there. On a 9 million safe, don't put that in there. That is not for you to say, or 20% discount. Do not put the instrument or the discount or the valuation in your ask slide. I want you to say, we are raising X to get to Y milestone in Z time. That's really what it boils down to. Let me repeat. We are raising X amount of dollars, in this case 400K, to get to Y milestone in Z period of time. That's what you want to say. Let's look at your timeline here, and this is where I get a little more incredulous. Funds will be used to launch seed round 700K ARR, 2 million ARR. You're making gross assumptions that you have not proven yet, nor have you given me any evidence that you know how to make these assumptions or that you're going to come even close. You want to put a use of funds, UOF, use of funds. So we're hiring programmers, we're doing this, we're doing that, go to market strategy, and this is your milestone. Get rid of all this stuff. Unless you're telling me that you're going to do the MVP and you're going to get 100K products and 50 resellers at launch, and then you're raising your seed round, which doesn't seem likely, just be very straightforward and say, we're raising $400,000 to launch our product and reach 100,000 products and 50 resellers by Q4 2024, and then use of funds. That's the ask slide, and that's a lot more straightforward because the rest of this stuff is just confusing and it's making me lose confidence. Then you got this statement here on the last slide: join us and help millions of e-commerce sellers thrive and keep delivering us with great products. Don't put that in there. Don't put any of this in there. Just the contact slide, right there. Let's forget this. Just make it very simple contact slide. I want you to listen to my summary. It's super important. What you've got going for you is a team. The team has got internal tech talent that you work together and you can work on this. The other thing is you're working on AI and you're focusing the AI on a very specific use case instead of saying we're going to do a large language model, we're going to tackle a big problem. If you narrow it down and just say we're looking for brands and products that have reseller programs and connect them to resellers that will know what to do with that and become more successful, then you've got a narrow use case for AI, and that's a good thing. Instead of trying to compete on large language models or generative AI, all the stuff that OpenAI with all their billions of dollars in funding are going to be working on, you're staying away from that, which is a good thing. The big issue that I have is that this deck, as I went along with all the statements that you put in there, made me lose confidence. I did not trust that what you were saying was true because of all these buzzy words and embellished statements. You don't have to be insecure and push yourself there. Launch your MVP and just be very straightforward. This is our problem, solution. This is how it works. This is what happened. This is what's been done. And this is where we're going. You're going to be answering the questions. Why us? Why now? And what's different about this whole thing, which I know you have in your minds. It's all in there because your team is telling me that it is. Work on the messaging and just be super clear. And then I know you're going to be able to make a deck that's going to raise your pre-seed round. Hope that was helpful. Look forward to the next revision. Feel free to send it to me. If you're a founder and you're watching this and you really want your deck to be critiqued and reviewed, because that's how we all learn together, leave me a comment and I'll tell you how to send me your deck. More than happy to help out. That's it for this video. Thanks again. I'll see you in the next pitch deck critique and review.